there.
Bon matin. It's Bastille Day, I think.
It is. Happy Bastille Day.
Happy
Don't get
Bastille
stuck in the
Day.
Bastille. You can't get out.
Oh. I haven't celebrated quite enough today, but I did have a croissant. So we'll start there. To me, that's the beginning.
Very cool.
Actually, I would love to do a quick shout out as we're kind of waiting for people to jump on. There is a cafe. There's a cafe down just really close to me on Polk Street, Polk in Washington, called Up for Days. And they have the best pastries. They have a full bakery behind their counter. So everything could not be more fresh. It's incredible. And they're really creative pastries too. Like they'll take some croissants and they put it into a presser and they flatten it down, which sounds like, oh gosh, it takes all the beauty away from a croissant. But actually you end up with this crispy, crunchy, chewy croissant-like thing. It's really amazing. So
interesting. That sounds very good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And they just have really great like standard. The standards are there, but they also get really creative with their breads. Like they'll do a passion fruit bread, or they have like strawberry coffee, that type of thing. Just sort of wild concoctions. So I highly recommend it. Up for Days, Polk in Washington.
I shall have to try that out.
Mm.
I've been missing fancy croissants. I think the last time I had a fancy croissant was a croissant stuffed with Japanese red bean paste at this unnamed cafe a block away from Isetan in Tokyo.
Oh, wow.
That was a long time ago.
How was it?
It was very good. Nowadays, I just get everything delivered from, I don't know. I get fed mostly by Spam and various ghost kitchens.
Oh, wow. A lot of people are joining so quickly. Nice.
Yeah, I see Steve is here. I've sent him an invite to speak. And hopefully we'll get Susan and Cedric on as well. Although there is one place, another really, my collection of boring restaurants now is, so I live near North Point Center, which has been kind of empty for a while. And the restaurant space has a new tenant called iBowl.
Okay.
You can imagine where this is going.
Yeah.
It's like Apple style decor, serving some kind of food in a bowl. But I went there and I tried the chicken karaage, and it's actually pretty good.
Mm.
But this is my limited experience these days.
Oh, why? Do you not go out for meals too often? And I wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly. I go out sometimes. I go up to the roof of my building and look around, and I go back indoors.
That's good. Save you a lot of money that way. We went to Perry's last night, the classic Perry's.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love Perry's. It's just that, it's more of a nostalgia than it is for the food. Which sadly, I'm sorry, Perry's, it's really gone downhill. I had a steak sandwich for $22, and there was kind of a whisper of steak.
A $22 steak sandwich.
Oh la la, yeah, and that was
amazing.
It was, and it was actually one of the least expensive items on the menu. I almost got the ribs, which were $30. And the reason I'm saying this is because Perry's it's a classic San Francisco. It was in Tales of the City.
Yeah, it's a legend.
It's a legend, but it's not glamorous, nor should it be. And the prices are, and I feel for them, and I feel for restaurants. I truly, truly do. It's really hard to turn a profit and stay in business. But it's also really hard when people just want to go out for something moderate.
Oh well.
Really tough.
Well, our entire crew is here, so we're ready to go. In another 2 minutes, it'll be 11 o'clock, and we can formally start. Susan, how are you?
I am okay. Just before I got on, my friend Jared sent me a YouTube video of a little girl growing up with a rescued pit bull that they rescued when he was a puppy, and it goes through like all the way to when she's 13 and he dies of cancer. So I was sobbing. I was sobbing. I didn't know it was going to have that ending. So just before I got on, I was like, oh no, Jared.
You gotta watch for the manipulative content on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a real story though, and it's really amazing. I'm going to post it but get some Kleenex, because if anybody's ever grown up with a dog, you'll know. Oh, but it was beautiful.
And our guests are here as well. Steve and Cedric, how are you doing?
All right. Good morning. How's everyone?
Morning.
All right.
Doing good. We've got about 30 seconds before we start.
I hear noise.
That might be my dog chewing on a Benny bone.
Oh, speaking of pit bulls.
Wow, there you go.
She, I had to take her out this morning. She would have been a mess during this meeting, so.
I have Quinn here, so we'll see how that works out. She'll be fine unless she sees the neighbor cat come into the yard.
I'm taking her over to meet up with Adam and had to hang out at Marina Green for a few hours, run off some energy when we're done here.
With Sweetie. Yeah, I mean, bringing up the whole topic of homelessness from that perspective, all three of us, Adam, Better Soma, and Steve, Adami, and I all have rescued pit bulls that came in one way or another from, homeless or abandonment situations.
Interesting. Okay, it is 11 o'clock. Welcome, everyone, to the Sunday brunch space at the Voice of San Francisco, thevoicesf.org. I'm here with editorial director Susan Dyer Reynolds, correspondent Erica Sandberg, and our two wonderful guests. Steve Adami is executive director of The Way Out, which I believe is a ministry. It's related to the Salvation Army, correct? Is it part of it, or?
Yeah, so The Way Out is a recovery-focused homeless initiative of the Salvation Army San Francisco that coordinates 7 core programs, a little over 340 beds, into a recovery system of care that's really designed to get people off the streets, help them stabilize and heal, get them off the drugs, teach them how to live, and then give them up to 4.5 years where they're really in a structured, supportive, drug-free environment where they're rebuilding their lives until they can really stand on their own 2 feet, become financially independent, and hopefully go back and raise their children and reunite with their family and reclaim their place in the community.
Amazing. And we're also here with Cedric Akbar, who is Director of Forensic Services at Westside Community Services. Done a number of things in the Bayview for a long time. He's also an elected member of the Democratic Cenmtral Committee, and we're hearing that you may have eyes on something higher.
Good morning. Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. Yes, when I see things that need to be done, I like to come in and be a part of the solution instead of the problem. And once I serve as I serve, I'm ready to move on and go somewhere else. Because one thing I am really tired of is seeing lifetime politicians and people making a career out of politics. And when they do that, they tend to lose their sense of direction when they first came in. And it turns into campaigning all the time, raising money, and trying to, I'll just put it this way, not telling the voters the truth.
Interesting. Yeah, I can certainly see that. A number of members of the board have certainly done that in the last few months. It's been a pretty interesting new combination of supervisors, but many of the same problems continue. So we're here mainly, I guess, to talk primarily about drug policy. I wanted to see where people think the city is going. There's a lot of things that still need to be done. I know that we had talked a bit about sort of reforming Prop C and the reallocation of funds. That's going to get its first vote at the Board of Supervisors this Tuesday. How do people think things are going at this point?
It's Cedric, jump in.
Yeah.
Cedric looks like he's muted.
Uh-oh. Well, yeah, that happened. That's Spaces may be malfunctioning on it.
Cedric, you have to unmute yourself.
No, I was.
Oh, there he is.
I was unmuted. I don't know what happened, but okay. Sorry about
there you
that. No, I mean, this is part of why we, Steve and myself, had started this process, was because now what I'm seeing, the politicians that are in office now are telling us that's not what we're seeing. And to me, at one point, we were moving people from one place to the next, but now it's getting to the point where it's back again. And it's prevalent in all of our neighborhoods. And what I see now is people in need of help. And when a person is in need of help and can't help themselves, someone has to step in. And that's not being done right now. And the other thing I was looking at, something that people in San Francisco are really afraid to say, is there are laws that are already on the books that says that you can't sleep on the sidewalk, you can't defecate on the sidewalks. There are laws that say you can't use drugs openly on the sidewalks or sell drugs. Laws saying that you can't steal, but they're not being enforced at all. And even when people do get arrested, they may stay in jail for 2 or 3 days and they're back out on ankle monitor. And what I see is what it's telling the rest of the world, the country, is that if you come to San Francisco with the laws that are being passed, all you have to do is come here, get your GA and some food stamps. You can use drugs or sell drugs, go to jail. And when you go to jail, we offer you free housing when you come out. And that's what it seems like the world is saying to me right now, is what we're delivering to people. And that really needs to stop. And no one, I don't know, because even when I talk to people, a lot of people are still saying, we don't want to go back to the 70s and the 80s when we had mass incarceration. But right now, this is not about mass incarceration. This is about saving our streets and making it safe for everyone that's in San Francisco, and saving those that are out there that can't help themselves anymore.
Right.
Did you hear that in the background? Those cheers? I don't know. Am I the only one who heard that?
I think San Francisco has been so out of balance for, a couple of decades that we've just made everything okay. And, Cedric and I have, both been through the system, in and out of addiction, homelessness, jails, prisons, probably ruined everything we ever touched in our lives. And, by the grace of God, we got clean and sober and our lives changed. And for years, the city continues to tell us what we see on our streets, we don't see. And it's undeniable. And I think the system is kind of going through a reset now. And I think they are really trying to prioritize recovery and public safety. But when I see 4 sheriffs watching people smoke meth and don't arrest anybody, when I see people stealing from Target and cops don't even show up to address the issue, we send the message that those things are okay to do in San Francisco. Everybody, at least elected officials and some appointed officials, make it sound like these are intractable, unsolvable problems. And actually, they're very, very easy to fix. If we just enforce the law, like Cedric was saying, it's illegal to sell drugs, it's illegal to be under the influence, it's illegal to possess paraphernalia, it's illegal to break into cars, it's illegal to sleep on the sidewalks. If we just enforce the law, the majority of our problems go away. What's happened is the intersection of harm reduction, housing first, and Prop 47. San Francisco has always been very tolerant of low-level crime, but Prop 47 took it to an entirely new level. And even since the passing of Prop 36, it's never been implemented in San Francisco. So it might be a state law, might sound great, but in practical application, it does not exist in San Francisco.
I
watched the video this morning. Guy going down Market Street. Streets were lined. Drug dealers, drug addicts. Like, how do people think people get the money to get high?
That's a good question. How do they? You want to give a quick outline on that? How do they get the money? Where's this money coming from? And how much every day do they need in order to feed their habit? And I realize everyone's different, but we can give an average.
I don't know how much they need, but I can only tell you from my own life. I was taking penitentiary chances every single day, all day. Mm-hmm. I lived to get high. I got high to live. And when I got busted, I went to jail, went to prison, cleaned up, got out, and did it all over again. But at some point, there was a moment of clarity. Because when you're in custody, well, at least when Cedric and I were in custody, there weren't really a lot of drugs in jails or prisons. Now, everybody in jail, when they get there, they hand them Suboxone. Doesn't matter if you're an opiate addict or not. It's like we've created a permanent culture of underclass people that will never be able to take care of themselves. And we do it in the name of everybody just needs a lease and their own home. And when we talk about like housing first as a law, Senate Bill 1380, one thing everybody leaves out is how much it actually costs. And I can just tell you from trying to build a building in San Francisco, it's about $1 million a unit.
Yep.
And then you're going to pay their rent for the rest of their lives, which is about $50,000 a year per person. I was at a house party a couple weeks ago talking about a project and asking people, do you understand what Housing First is? And every single person said, yeah, it just helps people get off the streets and, gets them off of drugs and gives them like services so they can get a job and so they can get back with their families. I was like, no, that's not what Housing First is. It actually disincentivizes people to improve the quality of their lives because then they lose the free unit that they have that taxpayers are paying for. So if people make over 30% of AMI, or in San Francisco, if you have a job making minimum wage, you don't qualify anymore because you make over 30% of area median income. If you go to treatment and go into like post-treatment housing, like programs Cedric and I run, people have been off the streets for a few years. They no longer qualify for help. And so what we do is Housing First is sucked all the oxygen out of the air and taken all the money out of services like treatment, domestic violence services, shelters, and it's put it all into one bucket. And that's why when you're talking about the reallocation of Prop C, I think the mayor should have the ability to use those funds to meet the crisis of the day, whatever that is at that moment. So right now it's really mental illness and drug addiction. We should be funding more treatment beds. We should not be funding any more drug tolerant or drug permissive housing or shelters. Cedric and I are in the middle of opening up 4 abstinence-based projects that we should talk about at some point that are outside of the status quo that the city typically funds. But we've just created this culture of people that will never really improve the quality of their lives. They might have a nice place to live until they die or get thrown out, but we're not changing. We're not really changing people's lives that way.
And yeah, that's definitely. I think that vote and that decision, giving the mayor the power to do that, is going to be a really big test for him, and a test for the supervisors as well. And it is right now. It's basically a piece of trailing legislation that is being sort of not necessarily hidden, but sort of upstaged by all the other budget stuff that's going to be voted on Tuesday as well. So. And it's going to require a supermajority from the supervisors in order, 8 votes in order to get it passed.
And when does that vote happen?
It happens on Tuesday. Tuesday is the first vote on the budget and the trailing legislation that goes with it.
Okay. And so then what? Then if they don't get the 8 votes, that's it?
Well, he can get a smaller amount, I think, for a simple majority. So they'll probably redraft it and turn it into something like that. Do you think that's what'll happen, Steve? Or
Steve?
Sorry. My phone is acting up. I'm not sure. I need to look. I need to look more at the legislation, and I'm not sure. I just hope there's political will, that there's enough votes to give the mayor the authority to use the funds, discretion to use the funds as he needs.
Yeah.
I know that it's a priority of his, and I think that he should have some ability to do that. I mean, I think Prop C is problematic altogether. I mean, it's caused a lot of businesses to leave San Francisco. And yes, AI businesses are coming back until they go public, and then whatever investors take over those companies, they'll probably move them somewhere else where the tax burden isn't so.
That's what's happened with the firms that have opened here. They've as soon as they get hit with that tax, they move and then sue the city for the taxes they overpaid or didn't have the it's a very we can't talk about Prop C without talking about the lobbyists in the room, which is Jennifer Friedenbach, who at a 501c3, the Coalition on Homelessness, lobbied full-time, which is illegal, for Prop C for the better part of a year with Mark Benioff, the Salesforce CEO, who funded the whole thing and tried to guilt all the other tech presidents and CEOs to partake, which did not work because Jack, who owned Twitter, and he moved all his tech other firms out. So there's that, and then there's Kristen Evans, who also sits on the commission, which basically just approves whatever Jennifer asks for. And I do have inside sources and people that have gone to the meetings and the hearings, and all have told me that she controls the money, and she has the biggest voice in the room, and she makes the decisions, and it's just a bad plan. I mean, and I just point to what is her success. They've added a whopping 700 net units in 2020, well, 21, 22 fiscal years, and then 23, 24, a whopping 800 net units. They're very obtuse about Prop C. The funds, it's called Our City, Our Home. You can find their annual report at the website, which is on the city website. But they say things like we've sustained 5,000 families or people, sustained shelter for. I mean, that can mean that it could be a navigation center. You don't even know what it means because they're very obtuse. So I want an audit. I've been saying that for years. We need a full outside audit, not inside, not the controller who's involved. We want an outside audit. I want to see an outside audit of those funds, exactly where they've gone. They don't give you any details as to, okay, well, we housed a family of 5 in this hotel and they're still there. He's working, the mother's off drugs. You don't see there's no, and they say, privacy. It can all be done with redacted names, ages. You don't have to put any of that information in. You just need to tell us, here's the 5,000 people, where they went and where they are now. And that's not that difficult. And they don't want to do it, and we know why.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of some of the obtusity that happens when you ask for information, I had sent out a sunshine request to a lot of different departments about which ones, you've had some add back items that you asked for that were reauthorized by the boards of supervisors through the add back process, which we all know is kind of notorious. And so, what contractors are you working with on those, and what's it going to go to? And the response has sort of differed based on certain agencies. I mean, certain agencies will say, "Oh, we have about 5 or 6 with these groups here," and they'll give you a list of the groups, and the others, including certain agencies that we've had trouble with before, are basically saying, well, the budget hasn't been passed yet, so none of this has materialized, so we don't have anything right now. And that's their official response, although the others, I think most of them have basically said, technically we don't have anything right now, but once the budget passes, you should ask this again. And
yeah.
We'll do. So it's a combination of, bureaucracy, but many of them are just very obtusely just saying, well, we don't have anything right now, which is always the wonderful thing you have to deal with public records requests.
And Mike is editor-in-chief of The Voice and a long time OG of City Hall. What would you say are the most difficult departments to get anything from?
Oh, I would have to go back the list again, but OEWD is yeah, it's exactly. You know, a lot of OEWD is Office of Economic Workforce Development, and then
which is under the mayor's office and was really bad under Breed, and I hope that Lurie plans to fix that in his list of 1 million things to do.
And I know either HSH or Health is in there, but I don't want to pin those down immediately because I have to go back through all of these emails that have been sent back in this folder that I have.
I mean, I can tell you from my experience, the homeless department has been, I'm not, and I think part of it is their incompetence, but for years they've been very difficult. Even though they follow me on X and I follow them and I've reached out through DMs and everything, it's very hard to get stuff from them. But as far as the Department of Health, I mean, I had to get a secret recording from a secret source of their, discussion with the harm reduction people. Note that Steve and Cedric and other people doing the abstinence, Tom Wolf, none of these people were in that room. And that I got more information out of that recording about any contracts and stuff than I ever did. And then that led me to be able to know what other things to request just by listening to that recording. So I started requesting other things like Gubbio project contract, things like that. But had I not had that recording, they were I couldn't get anything out of them.
Exactly. So, Steve, let's talk more about the way out and the projects that you have set up that hopefully we'll be able to get set up in the city. What's the difference that they present versus what's been done by the city in the past, and where are you planning on, or where have you put them in place?
So, it's a great question. Right now, there is 7 core programs. 2 of them are in the process of opening, and then we're partnering with Westside Community Services on 2 additional programs, one of which has already opened. I do want to just take a step back and just talk about Prop C for just one quick second. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Prop C has funded some really good projects. Cedric is running several of them that are all abstinence-based models, and actually most people probably don't know this, but Jennifer Friedenbach and others were actually very supportive of Cedric's projects and helped get those over the finish line. So I do feel like everybody just needs to work together instead of being embedded in more ideology, and leave that stuff behind and just talk about how do we get the streets cleaned up without perpetuating addiction, without perpetuating crime? How do we get people to a better place in their lives, and how do we stop attracting people from all over the country to end up here because they want to get loaded, they want free apartments, and there's no accountability? But Cedric runs the Minna Project, funded by Prop C, a woman's therapeutic teaching community, funded by Prop C, and it is possible that maybe these new projects that we're opening, they're either opioid settlement money or potentially Prop C. I'm not sure. But all these new projects, all of our projects, even Cedric's, they're all abstinence-based models. There's zero tolerance for drug use. We also don't want to perpetuate homelessness and addiction. So the luxury of our model is that we have various levels of care. So if somebody relapses, we don't have to throw them to the street like they used to do in the 80s. We just move them back to our recovery wellness center, get them in a safe environment, or move them to one of Cedric's stabilization centers, and then staff go and meet up with the person the next day, see what happened, get them back on track, and reintegrate them back into the program. The goal is just to keep the environment safe and free of drugs so that people have a safe space to recovery and improve their lives. I'll give you an example. We're opening up the city's first recovery-focused shelter. The Department of Homelessness has been very supportive the entire process. It's the only shelter that's going to have a curfew. It's the only shelter that's going to have ongoing, regular, and random drug testing. It's the only shelter that's going to require you to do 2 or 3 activities. We're calling them activities based around life skills, but groups, health and wellness, outside recovery activities, with the ultimate goal is once people get off the streets and they get stable, that you can then triage them either to treatment or sober living or some other environment. But it's a really exciting project. It's new for that department. They're excited about it. We're excited about it. And I think it's a good direction for the city.
Steve, let me step in right there, though. Because they are excited about it. That's what they tell us. That's what they tell me to my face. That's what they tell Steve to his face. But what happens is they're so bogged down with their current system that what you do, you'll wind up getting the same product that we've been getting forever. And for us, it's like a day-to-day fight on being able to stop being so embedded into the old and being able to embrace the new of talking about sobriety. And one little simple thing is like, they want us to make sure we have Narcan stations throughout the building. We don't even look at, I understand it on one part, but in our buildings, we don't allow people to use drugs and alcohol. We monitor that very well, because for me, if I have Narcan stations, in some way I'm messaging to the people and the individuals, oh, if I do use, somebody's going to come and save me. But we like to make the approach a lot different than that. And we don't want those things that are in the building. So what the city does is like the top may say they won't change, but it doesn't go down all the way to the system of being able to change their RFPs, to be able to change how they conduct day-to-day business. So every day it's been a fight. But I will say that for the little part that we're playing in this is that we're being able to make that change. But this is what Steve was saying about how we have to work together. We have to be able to change the whole paradigm of what San Francisco is and what using drugs is like. Because what we have embraced is enabling people to do whatever they want to do, and that they have no choice in the matter, and they're helpless, and we have to come in and have saviors. But those saviors have turned into $1 billion industry in this city when you look at it at all. So that at some point, it's nothing wrong with telling a person that you can stand up again. You can live without drugs. You can become a responsible individual in your community. And something else, talking about ideology. San Francisco is so caught up in this. The Democratic Party is caught up in this. And San Francisco politics is all about ideology. It has a damn thing to do with the person. And one thing I know about ideology, that's individual rights. But what we have to look at is community rights. Because when you look at a community at large, what I do, what Cedric Akbar does, affects everybody else in my community, affects everybody in my household. So I have to be accountable for what I do. You can't have some that don't have to be accountable and others do. Because we want to hold a politician to the fire if something happens to them where their life gets exposed, but we won't do it the same thing to the people every day on the street. So those kind of dynamics really have to change in this city. And what also had me afraid is even like people don't even want to talk about this, about the ICE. They're trying to do that now. As far as I'm concerned, the Democratic Party is trying to make that such a big issue, but we lose sight of the day-to-day people, because I think that's part of the problem that has happened with us as the Democratic Party. We forgot about the everyday people.
Yep.
We've forgotten about the people who need food on their table, or gas prices being high, or having some affordable housing for individuals. We don't talk about those things anymore. We sit up here and talk about, now we have the ICE thing. We'll sit up and talk about, and this is no disrespect to them, but we'll talk about transgender rights in prison. And what does that have to do with me eating every day, or anyone eating every day? And that's part of, that's part of the things that we have to look at, all those dynamics when we're facing these factors now. And we get caught up in those things so much that politicians use that as a way to get in office because it follows a wave. And then we lose sight of the day-to-day living for people.
Yes, I agree.
So, Cedric, you're a member of the Democratic County Central Committee, and I would dare say a member of what has been characterized as a centrist majority on that group, the local Democratic Party. And I hear you giggling there. Where do you see the direction of the local party on all these issues? Do you see any improvement there, or do you see?
Well, I mean, like I said, for me, I had never been in politics before in my life. And to be honest with you, is that I was asked to run, and I had not a clue what the Democratic Cenmtral Committee was at all. And once I found out what it was, it's still taking me a whole adjustment period. And I'm just kind of like processing right now, because in recovery, we're taught to be honest. We're taught to be, straight up about how you feel, what you think, say what you mean what you say, let your inside show on the outside so it doesn't seem like you're hypocritical in life. And when I got into politics, I was looking and I say, nobody tells the truth. Nobody, they take sides for this person at this time, and then they take sides for this issue just in order to keep things going. So that was a hard adjustment period for me. So I'm watching all of this. And in some ways, and I think voters want this too, when you're in politics, and now the Democratic Cenmtral Committee, you don't get paid. But anyway, it's like they expect you to be going 24/7. And one thing I had to make a commitment to my family and to myself is that no matter, even like here on Sunday mornings, I'm a person that go to church every Sunday morning. It was a whole lot of events that interfered with that. I'm a person that's in recovery. I have to go take care of my recovery. So I'm not going to allow anything to make me a better human being and a better person to get in the way of that. So those are like my own morals that I have with myself and my own accountability that I hold with myself. But looking at the party, I just think it's a party as a whole that you have some old timers that are no longer necessarily that are elected officials, but they come in and help, and they come from the old school part. And that's who I've been paying attention to. And they have been really, because the Democratic Cenmtral Committee is supposed to be about registering people to vote. And we into everything but registering the people to vote. And that's part of my role in this, is to get people out and get them to vote in San Francisco so we can have at least people urging them to vote. But the other part of this party is we came in as a wave, because it was kind of like getting rid of the progressives and coming in with a more moderate approach. And that was different for me. The other thing is, I'm just, like I said, processing my part of it. You had to raise X amount of dollars to be in this, because I didn't even know this, that it takes you at least $20,000 to even get in the game to be able to run for this.
Yep.
And when I saw that, the whole time I ran, I never asked no one for money. I couldn't do it. It just wasn't in me to ask people for money. And then I used to hear how much some people would have. Some people would have 200,000. And I was always wondering, I say, how the hell is they getting this kind of money? But most of my donations just came from everyday people who just said they wanted to help me. And, but I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to ask for money. It just wasn't a part of me. So I just knew, I said, well, I'm losing this, because there's no way I can raise that kind of money and do that. But what I found in that's when I started seeing that the money that you raise with this, that money right there in the Democratic Cenmtral Committee, that money still, you can utilize that money until, you get elected. But if you do, you can use that money again for another election. So I was looking at all the games that are played with this. I can go on about looking at those things. And then I started questioning myself, do you really want to be a part of this? How do you keep yourself separate? But that's why I know that on one part, I said I want to make changes. So in order for me to make changes, I have to be able to go into this, be able to keep my same mentality and keep myself where I stay rooted and grounded in the purpose that I came, and just try to influence different people with what I can do within the system. And then speak out about what I see, because it doesn't make you a popular person when you do speak out.
Well, I call it the, Democrats for no change, because it seems to me that, everybody thought everybody on there was, but it looks like there's a pretty slim amount of people that really want change. And I'm just hoping that changes over time, because there is a lot of, I hear a pit bull. It's basically I don't know. You might as well have Coco in there, honestly, voting in some ways, because they still are voting all in the same way. And there's a few mavericks like you and Marjon Philhauer and the guy Trevor. But it seems like there's a lot of people that just want to keep things the same. Don't want to rock the boat. It's a catch-22.
Well, I think one of you said the key word, which is people don't tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner you accept that when people do get into power, they do have that role of authority, then they will unfortunately start to look you straight in the eye and tell you exactly the opposite of what's really going on and what their intention is. And it's really vile. It's extremely frustrating. It's almost across the board. Quite frankly, I don't know how to deal with that, certainly as a reporter, but also just as a general person. Like, you need to know what's happening. And the opaque film that is over this is beyond frustrating. You'll hear a lot of great words. Yeah, we want to do this, and we're on your side, and we want to clean up the streets, we want to get people help, and then you don't see the action. And I don't know how you two are dealing with that, because you're totally in the thick of it in a completely different way. But as somebody who covers it, and just as a general citizen, it can leave you. It can really make you feel cynical after a while, which is the exact opposite of my natural personality. I'm pretty, I'm pretty optimistic, but that's something that will really erode your faith in how the system works. How do you deal with that?
I have to also say, again, my nemesis, as a reporter for years, I've been covering her for 2 decades. Jennifer Friedenbach, she does not want the system to change. She wants to keep it the same, or she wouldn't be fighting with the mayor over a minuscule amount of money that they're not even using. I'm saying minuscule in terms of the fact they have spent almost over $822 million so far. They've spent in just a few years, and they seem to think there's this endless pot of money, but we know that companies are moving out. The companies that do move in are, as Cedric mentioned and Steve mentioned, there a lot of them are these AI startups that aren't public and won't owe any taxes, and so the base is a little thin. Salesforce is probably still paying. I know the health industry is actually bigger than the tech industry in San Francisco, so they're probably paying. But I think, one of the things that I'll always go back to is a former colleague of hers that reached out to me after one of my articles and gave me an interview of how he basically helped her get her start, and I'll put that link up. But one of the things that he pointed out to me was that she constantly said that the nightmare for her was doing shelters and temporary housing, not because it was going to get people off the street, because that's not what matters to her. But she said it was her nightmare because it took away from her plan or her ideology of getting everybody permanently housed forever. That's just not realistic. I've always said there should be no such thing as permanent supportive housing unless you are truly someone that is in a situation where you must be in a place that you require skilled nursing and care. The permanent supportive housing should be temporary supportive housing. That's how they look at it in San Jose. And in fact, I'm going to be going on a tour with Mayor Matt Mahan down at one of the Dignity Moves projects and writing a story about it, because it is working in the Silicon Valley. And we need to figure out why that is. And I think I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say a big part of why is there is no Jennifer Friedenbach screaming on the steps of City Hall, getting her 5,000 people to write their form letters. And she's just got such a program that she's always used. I talk about her, having her things with the Sharpie markers. She does her handwritten, downtown is for drug users. This whole thing, this mentality that has worked for her for so long. And I think she fears, very much fear, in fact, I know she does, that she fears that that's going to all get taken away from her. And, the idea that, she can go put them on her almond farm. Okay. Her family has a 5,000 acre almond farm. Go build your housing there if you want to support them forever. But that's not taxpayers' responsibility, nor do they want to support someone to do drugs and live off the system forever. It's the most unrealistic thing, and I just don't understand it. But I can promise you, having covered her as long as I have, that you're never going to get her to change her mind on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've had nothing but bad experiences in going into and for many, 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 many years. So my opinion is you get what you see, and I have zero faith that she's going to change. And the fact is, look, she's had her turn. Let someone else do it now. It's really old school over. You guys both mentioned the fact that there's a bit of a dustiness right now in City Hall and in local government, elected, non-elected, kind of thing. And it's time for something new. So I out with the bad old and with the good new, hopefully.
That's a great way to look at it, because she has had almost 3 decades of having a seat at the table. And in one of my recent articles, I said it was that Mayor Lurie needed to take away her seat at the table. Until you take Jennifer Friedenbach's ideology out, and people like Kristen Evans, who only believe that everybody should, that they're better off in a tent than in a temporary shelter. I've never understood that. They're the ones that handed out the tents. I have a picture of tents, boxes of tents piled up from the Coalition on Homelessness saying we have tents. They were, when we talk about tents, why are there no tents right now? Because they were the ones handing them out and they can't anymore. So, they clearly know that they're being watched. But Dean Preston, and I did a story called Horror in the Hate about Dean Preston and Kristen Evans handing out tents in my neighborhood of 3 decades, and they were in front of people's houses. You will never see that in the Silicon Valley. There will never be a tent in front of somebody's house. It's not allowed. And that's the other thing I say is, how do you change this? Why is it happening in San Francisco and not in Cupertino? Because it's allowed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I would love to know from you two guys, as guests, your vision for the city, and about if you do have a vision, if you think it is, if it's fulfillable.
Since Cedric's elected, we'll let him go first.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. We're having trouble with this phone. So, one vision I just see, and it's not necessarily a vision, I just think what needs to be done, first of all, is people should, like in our lenient San Francisco, I don't really believe in that whole thing about you can give a person the opportunity to either go to treatment or go to jail. If you refuse to go to treatment, then you go to jail. And while you're in jail, I truly believe services should be offered to people that have addiction, mental health, and also people that are struggling with learning how to be back on their feet and to be able to live independently and live in their own housing. And once they leave incarceration, that all of those services are there for them. And I know it's going to sometimes be by choice, but I just think that part of the sentencing should be to help you to get back on your feet. That's one part of it, of doing that. Also, here in San Francisco, about our local government, we have too many rules, laws that are on the books that contradict one another, and it takes so long for anything to get done in this city. We have, like when we're trying to decide on what we're going to do with these programs, we may have 5 or 6 individuals on the city that's almost $1 million in contracts. $1 million in salaries that someone's making, sitting here talking to us about how to get a program started. And they tell us that we're the experts, but if we're the experts, we're not making nowhere near that. We don't need that many people to be able to get business conducted and done in this city, and then have to go through 99 boards. I understand sometimes why it was put in place. They call it checks and balances, but it's not checks and balances anymore. It's just about political favors for one another.
Yep.
The other thing is, even looking at downtown, something simple. We have so many empty buildings right now. That would solve, if it was just about housing, you could put people in those buildings. But we come up with all these rules. We could put the people that are on the street, put them in a building, and that would take care of it all, at least that part. But even in housing, you shouldn't get anything just for free off of taxpayers' money. You're supposed to be able to be there temporarily, lift yourself up, and be able to move and do it independently. Now, if you're struggling and it's kind of hard, and we get that, and we understand that, but we would have things in place for that. Also, that this city belongs to everybody. It's not just belong to the choice few and to the homeowners. People who pay rent, people who don't necessarily have that are part of the city also. And we have to also be more inclusive of that instead of turning everything into an industry. And that's what I just really believe, that we have turned this whole city into one big industry. So, and then for me, it's like being able to listen to the people that you're trying to bring assistance to and help to. And this other one that, is not going to be popular a lot of times, because when you hear it, but allowing people to come from outside this city, outside this country. San Francisco can't take on the whole world right now. Now, I will say America has done this itself by going and taking resources and everything from the world, and then sometimes the chickens come home to roost that way. I understand that part, but the other side is, the reality is, in San Francisco, we can't do it. And I don't have no problem, too, with, if you've been in San Francisco, and I'm just saying, for 3 months, you need to go back home. Take your butt back home and go do it where you can do it in that city. And that's just the way I look at it. It's just, to me, about just having some accountability throughout the city. And not just 1 or 2 people need to be accountable. All need to be accountable. And I just also say this to Mayor Lurie, that part of it is, everybody was talking about change, and we have change. And he has a golden opportunity to make them changes and those hard decisions that most people don't want to hear and do. But that window is closing. It's closing real soon. And then it's just going to come into another part of, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But this is the time that, I would think that people voted for him to put him in office to be able to make those changes. And that's what I would like to see. And I'm just looking at it on the smaller side.
Are you more optimistic or pessimistic that that's going to happen?
I'm not either, because the way it looks, I look at the facts of what it is. No, because for right now, I would say it's not going to happen from what I'm seeing right now. And but will I be there as one of the people to help make that change and keep having a voice? Yes. But but right now, no, it's not happening. And like I said from the beginning, it's getting worse.
So on that topic, we had a question. Robert O'Reilly asked, what is your take on the strategy shift away from Lurie's campaign promise to stand up 1,500 shelter beds after doing 500? Difficulty getting sufficient associated support services, higher priorities that must take precedent before adding more shelter beds? What do you think is the issue there?
Well, all I think is the issue is, some parts of it you didn't realize that, the city has so many layers. to be able to get things done. Then you have people who've been working in the city 30 and 40 years that will not move anything that needs to be done. So some of that should have been cleansing. I thought he was going to get rid of more people than what he did, and to be able to bring his own people in, or bring in people who are ready to make the changes that he said he's going to make. Because otherwise, it's just going to sound like another person. What he ran on was that I was not one of them.
Yeah.
And so you can make mistakes. You can do a whole lot of things, but he hasn't done them. That's on him.
Yeah.
That ain't got nothing to do with how the city works. That's on him.
Yeah,
So,
he wouldn't be the. Yeah, I mean, honestly, he wouldn't be the first non-politician or even politician to run on a bunch of promises that he couldn't fulfill. And, not to say I told you so, but in the campaign, I kept saying, it's fine to not have to sell yourself as an outsider. But unfortunately, as an outsider, you also don't have the knowledge of, it's one thing to run a nonprofit that your mommy paid for, but it's another thing, and a small one at that, 75 people. It's another thing to run a giant city where everybody's out for themselves. And then having to deal with the neighborhoods, which, as we know from that video I have, he tells the mission, I'm going to put the first one in District 2. And then he tells District 2, I never mentioned District 2. So you could see right there where he was going to have a lot of problems. And, the 1,500 shelter beds, I said day one, that's never going to happen. I was shocked how many people thought it was going to happen. Amazing how many people would yell at me and write me back, or say to me on X, or write me letters, nasty letters. You just don't want to support Daniel Lurie making 1,500 shelter beds available. Well, sure I do, if he could accomplish it, but I absolutely knew it wasn't going to happen. I've covered politics long enough. And by the way, in the Marina, as the former owner and editor-in-chief of the Marina Times, I covered the Edward too. So I know what it's like trying to get things into neighborhoods. Ironically, someone who was very against the project in the Marina that you guys are doing wrote to me out of his mind about the idea, and then I brought up the Edward too, and I said, how's that going? He goes, gee, I don't know, I never hear a thing there, it's so quiet. So okay, maybe when things are run well, that's the problem. They've had so many experiences where things haven't been run well, and have been housing first, morgue second, and allow the drugs. I think that's one of the, there's a very gun-shy audience out there of neighbors who have seen, JJ's videos of body bags coming out of housing first hotels. And so I do believe that Mayor Lurie from day one was making promises that I at least knew he couldn't keep.
Well, I understand. For me, it's like this. I understand that, but like with Steve and I both, when he said 1,500 beds, we went to work without even having a conversation with him to locate damn near 1,500 beds for him. And that's what, and I took it by the promise of what he said, and we were going to work, and I still will work with him on getting this done, if that's what he really chooses to do. But then I see on Geary Street, they opened another harm reduction place, like calling it a stabilization center, which we've been saying we needed forever, but they can only hold about 20 people, and that's $20 million. To me, that was just the way she's doing the same old thing all over again. And you still haven't cut or reduced any of the harm reduction places to create a balance. And I haven't seen that at all. So, but like I said, I'm here to support anybody that wants to move toward making this city better. And we can't keep doing the same old thing. You just can't do it.
I think it's worth saying that when you've got, when you come into this situation, you make a promise like that, and you still have a large city department whose entire mission is essentially housing first, and you're going to try and turn the ship, as it were, away from that. It's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot harder and a lot longer to do that.
Well, he believed in housing first with his nonprofit.
Back to the original question about the future of San Francisco, I do feel like it's pretty evident that at the center of our demise is this drug and homeless crisis. Mm-hmm. And, I actually think it's more of a public safety crisis. And if we just enforce the law, most of the problems would go away. I don't think most of these people were living in apartments and working and lost their jobs and lost their apartments. It's the streets are overrun with drug dealers, drug users, and all kinds of unreported crime. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, personally, I want to live in a city that's safe, clean, vibrant, that prioritizes businesses and families and children's, and, you know, welcomes a variety of ideas to solve problems. And that's not what we have here. We need a system that's going to blend opportunity and accountability and prioritize public safety. The Housing First movement started under President Bush. It was a small project in upstate New York to get people who were what they called HUMs, high users of multiple services, off the streets because they were costing the city or the county they were in a lot of money. And it was just easier to get them. They were mentally ill, schizophrenic, get them off the streets and into a safer place where then they could thrive. People that are severely mentally ill, for the most part, are not smoking fentanyl on 6th and Mission.
Right.
Those are drug addicts. What happened was when President Obama made the Housing First law a one-size-fits-all approach to homelessness and said people just have to have a disability, be chronically homeless, and make less than 30% of area median income. At the same time, all of a sudden, addiction becomes a disability. So now what we're taking is people that are untreated, using drugs on the streets, and thinking that $1 million apartment is going to solve their problem. So our system, to get to a city that's safe, clean, and vibrant, we need to reboot the system and address the reasons why people are homeless. The UCSF report that came out in 2023, I think I responded to somebody's tweet recently. Tom Wolf, myself, Cedric, and about 80 other formerly incarcerated people who are also formerly homeless, who are also former addicts that are in recovery, showed up to contest the research, which was, 1, commissioned by the state, 2, was not peer-reviewed, and 3, I would argue it wasn't even generalizable to San Francisco. There's a more accurate picture of San Francisco's homeless population on the Reentry Council's website that myself, Tom, Cedric, Destiny Pledge, and others led, called The Housing Needs of Justice-Involved Adults. We all know that the nexus between homelessness, addiction, and crime is real. Yes, there probably are some families that fell on hard times, and we should get those children off the street. But by and large, what we see playing out in our street is public safety run awry, people committing crimes, and people using drugs. And until we bring in a level of accountability and actually start arresting people for breaking the law, we're just going to keep getting what we get. And so when Lurie campaigned, he campaigned on this public safety recovery treatment platform. And I do think those are still his intentions. I think, you know, they tried to open a Sprung shelter. Sprung is a manufacturer in the Bayview, and they got pushed back from the Bayview. That would have been 500 beds, right? So everywhere they tried to open somewhere, people complained, even people in the Tenderloin, and rightfully so. I actually argued that we should put sober environments in the Tenderloin because the city destroyed that area.
Yep.
Why don't we start putting good people back in the Tenderloin that can shop at businesses, go to restaurants, and change the culture?
Yes.
And I got zero positive feedback on that. My first choice of buildings was not the Marina Inn. My first choice of buildings was the HTL Hotel, which is in the Tenderloin, which actually was more expensive than the Marina Inn. So when we got to the Marina Inn conversation, people had lost their mind about it. And I agreed with everything they said because they were only working from their experience with the city,
right,
where they dumped SIP hotels in everybody's neighborhoods where people were committing crimes, using drugs, and dying. We've killed, or the drug dealers have killed 4,000 vulnerable San Franciscans, and nobody says a word about it. Tom tweets it out, Gina tweets it out, JJ tweets it out, other people say a few words about it here and there, but I haven't seen a single drug dealer charged with murder.
No.
You know, I saw the funniest thing last week, and again, I want to say that I really support our district attorney. I think she's done a great job. But I saw the funniest thing. It's probably a product of the court or pretrial diversion, but they had convicted a drug dealer. You'd have to read her press release, but the drug dealer's name was in there, and he was convicted of selling drugs in the Tenderloin. And the most telling part of the press release was that he was out of custody pending sentencing. And I think his sentencing is on August 12th, and I will show up that day to see if he actually shows up to sentencing. My bet is he doesn't show up, and there's probably reasons why he won't show up.
He's selling as we speak. I mean, come on. He's out there selling right now. We know that.
We just need a reset, and I'm not sure they make it. The elected officials in San Francisco make these problems like intractable and unsolvable. And I think I said yesterday in a tweet, man, we need some handcuffs, a bus, and some jail cells. We
That's
need
what
to
I
hold
said.
people accountable. And again, like, I'm not saying we need to lock up generations of people to solve our problems, but we've tried everything else and it's not working. So we need some balance until there's another idea that gets this sense of homeostasis. We need to try new strategies because the current strategy is not working. There was a video that came out this morning of Market in 7th. Looked like it did a year ago. It's horrible.
And I have to say, let me jump in here about that. I think this is something that people want to turn away from. The elected officials who are making the decisions, who are allocating funds, who are promoting this, that, and the other. They appear to turn away from that reality. I would love it if every time the board met, every time department heads met, that video and videos like it would be playing behind them as they're speaking, because you should not turn away from that reality. That's the reality. And everything that has been done before has resulted in that. So if that's all you look at, make that your focus.
Erica, there was a crazy tweet by an elected official in the last week talking about nonprofit accountability. We all know there's all kinds of problems with nonprofits. They come out every day, reports come out. But I thought it was funny that the same person that tweeted this out just handed Health Right 360 $140 million, just handed ECS $70 million, right? They say one thing, but then they don't stand up and hold the line when it actually comes to accountability. I was in a parallel meeting a couple days after that where a city department was talking about performance-based contracting. And what they're saying is we want to go away from cost reimbursement to a model that is fee-for-service. Somebody in a bed, you get paid. And my pushback during this meeting was, yeah, that's fine. You know what we do? We just put anybody in a bed because we need to get paid because we've got to pay staff.
Right.
That's not how you run a good contract. When I worked for the city, we oversaw 60 programs. I had a team of 4, and we managed 40-plus contracts, 60-some-odd programs, and there was key performance indicators or outcome measures, which were aligned with the controller's office definition. So an outcome measure is defined as the ultimate benefit the person receives for being in the program. So if you're in treatment, the ultimate benefit is you're not using drugs. So when Maggie Yanks, like her, love her, disagree with her, whatever, published a report in December that said San Francisco Medi-Cal-funded drug treatment programs have a 12% completion ratio. Those are the same people that are being incentivized just to stick them in a bed so they can pay their staff. So again, like, people run on these platforms. That's why I'm a big fan of Cedric's, and we've worked together for years. But when he talks about politics, he's honest. He's upfront. He says what he thinks will solve the problem, whether it's popular or not popular. And he stands up for actual working class people and people who have been through the same problems he's trying to solve. We don't have that today. And that is the biggest challenge. I mean, think about Tom Wolfe, just for example. The amount of attacks he gets for sharing his life experience on social media. He has a national platform now. He's done more to promote recovery and abstinence in San Francisco and throughout the state than anybody I know. He's been clean and sober 6 years, and he's done incredible work. Gina McDonald and her group, same thing. But these people literally get destroyed in the public's eyes because all they want for people is the same opportunity they were given. And I'm not sure why that's seen as such a bad thing. So
I've never gotten that either.
We need some accountability and some public safety, and I am just shocked that nobody else in San Francisco, besides the people probably on this call, think that.
Well, some people think that they're trying to do some kind of accountability, although I don't know if we would consider it to be such. Let me ask you, what's your feeling about the new ordinance that's going through the board right now that would say that at least one type of each type of homeless care facility has to be in every district?
Well, I mean, I think, well, I thought that got killed. But anyway, I don't disagree with that. But I don't think we should be funding places where people have zero accountability. So like I mentioned earlier, the shelter we're opening, it's the first shelter in the city to have a curfew. I got so much pushback from the city departments, it was insane. And I asked, and respectfully asked, as somebody who's been homeless and addicted to drugs and in and out of jail and prison, I said, I just need to know what somebody who doesn't have a job, doesn't have a family, and is addicted to drugs and homeless, what do they need to be doing on the streets after 9 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
And nobody could answer the question.
Exactly.
We should be working together to give people back their lives. So if people are struggling with drugs, we should be working together to not enable addiction or promote dysfunction and promise people free apartments. We should be having honest conversations about what's happening with their lives. You know, I got a pardon maybe last year from the governor, I think it was last year. But in 2020, a really significant thing happened in my life. I was working for the city, and I was the director of the Adult Probation Department's Reentry Division. And somehow I had an amazing boss that I became the state of California, the Chief Probation Officers Association Employee of the Year. And it was a virtual ceremony, but the judge who sent me to prison last, the lawyer who represented me, and the district attorney who prosecuted me were all on the call together. Right? I never shied away. I was always guilty. I wasn't one of these people that was ever innocent. But again, like, when you get clean and sober, when you get your life together, you can look back and reflect and be honest. And right now, people that are dealing with most of the population aren't honest with them. So if I lived in D2, D3, D5, wherever, I don't want a low barrier shelter in my neighborhood either. I don't. Sorry. Only because we allow people to do whatever they want. Think about this. We have a high school. 5 Keys. It's a high school that started in the county jail with $70 million worth of housing contracts. We have an organization, Urban Alchemy. I think they started by cleaning public bathrooms.
Yep.
They've become the quasi-police force, and they are also running housing programs. How does that happen? And then you stick them in a framework that says, hey, people can't have a curfew. Hey, you can't stop people from using drugs. Hey, you can't enforce people to go into services or attend groups. It's just a free-for-all. And then who's working in those programs? People who are formerly incarcerated, people who've gotten their own lives together, are now forced to work in these situations that puts them at risk.
Yep.
And that is also a problem.
And we've seen it. We've
So
seen
I
it.
wouldn't want shelters where all that stuff's happening in my district either. So like I do support the legislation, and I think the marina won on this one because the marina is getting a very highly structured, rigid, abstinence-based recovery housing program where nobody's entering that program that has not already completed drug treatment, that has not already demonstrated their commitment to recovery, and they're getting a really good model. That model should be replicated throughout the city. If we promoted those models, I don't think people would care. Delancey Street, I was there for 5 years, sits right in Mission Bay. Like there's $1 million condos all around it.
Yep.
They didn't tell you
True.
it was Delancey
Very
Street.
true.
You would just think of some little, looks like an Italian village on the water.
Yeah.
People are dressed well.
Great
People
restaurant.
are quiet. People are respectful. People are part of the community. That's what people want.
And that's the answer to another question I wanted to ask you, although maybe if you could go a little bit further about how you reached out to people in the marina, because again, you mentioned earlier the SIP hotels that got dumped on Lombard Street. That was a huge bugbear for all those people there, for residents and for businesses on Chestnut Street, because the impact was just so big. And I would have thought that you're trying to put something out there would have been insurmountable because of what they went through there, but you were actually able to do it.
You know, the process that happened in the marina wasn't great. Those things, they actually thought that we'd been planning this for years. It literally, as Cedric mentioned earlier, we submitted a list to Mayor-elect Lurie and his team with around 1,000 beds that were like 3 different categories, but they were all abstinence-based models. 4 of those programs are actually opening. It's a little over 300 beds. Plus there was another 30 beds at the Harbor Light Center that were also funded. And all of these models are not traditionally what the city funds. And I'll say this, what happened was actually public health actually did a decent job of outreaching in the marina for people that were close by. But then what happened was this thing happened so fast, there was all of a sudden a Prop I notice on the building. And people are like, what? And so when I showed up to the first Prop I meeting, people were pissed, and everything they said was valid. I agreed with. What I was trying to convey to them was like, the problems that they're talking about are not going to happen in the model that we're opening. It's an entirely different model than that has caused all the problems. And the model that we're opening is the model that the city should be embracing everywhere, that promotes public safety, that promotes abstinence, that requires a strictly drug-free environment. That doesn't mean you're drug-free inside and not drug-free outside, because that was the whole pitch from the city. They said, well, you know, all of our sites are drug-free. Okay, yeah, great. So I can walk outside, shoot heroin, and come back in. Right? That is not drug-free. We validate sobriety by drug testing. Last year, in our recovery system of care, which makes up the Way Out, as I mentioned earlier, 7 core programs, we did 1,800 random drug tests. So we test at regular intervals too. We test when people go on passes, people go on outings. We test all the time. But we did 1,800 random drug tests. Less than 1% came back positive, which means people buy in to the culture of recovery and the culture of family, because our programs really promote this family environment where everybody is helping the next person, or what we like to say, each one teach one. Everybody's going up the mountain the same way. And if somebody starts to slip behind, you reach back and pull them up to where you are. You know, you hear harm reductionists often say, you know, you got to meet people where they at. And I say, yeah, but you're not supposed to leave them there. You're supposed to bring them to where you are. And that's what doesn't happen in the streets of San Francisco. And we promote addiction. We enable addiction. We make drug addicts comfortable. We make it okay to be high. You can support your habit any way you want. And at the end of the day, if we just enforce the law and we were really compassionate to people, we would be having honest conversations about what's going on in their lives. So if harm reduction really does lead to recovery, then the harm reduction community and the abstinence community need to start meeting more regularly to have these conversations to see if that's really possible. Cedric and I have done that. We've reached out to several harm reduction organizations over the last month or two. You know, they're good people. They just have different beliefs than us. But when you just when you meet them and you talk to them, they're like us, but with different beliefs. And we do feel like we have to come together to solve this problem. And there has to be a level of accountability on the people that are causing the problems, on the organizations that are providing the services, and government that's funding the services. At the end of the day, you could say San Francisco government destroyed the Tenderloin. They allowed the drug dealers. They put all these hotels where people are using drugs. And, you know, if you see JJ's videos, they're pulling out body bags every single
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say the bare minimum should be not that body bags shouldn't be coming out of these places.
So another question for you guys is, with such intense social media presence and pressure, do you think that does move the needle? Do you think that when people are, they get thousands of likes and comments and media attention and the news comes out, are you seeing at least a change because people don't like such scrutiny, or they just don't care? I mean, like, where do you see that? Because boy, JJ's videos gets a ton, mine does, Susan, I mean, we get it, but how much of an impact do you believe that has on policymakers?
Well, I think it's had very little. I mean, maybe it's had some to move the needle towards more recovery-focused approaches. But I mean, I just saw a video that I apparently it might have been shot like at 7 o'clock this morning. That's when when I got up, I saw the video posted on Twitter, and it was like 7th and Market Street, and the same old stuff. So if we're seeing this stuff every day, it's a public safety problem. You cannot sleep on the sidewalk. You cannot use drugs in public. You cannot be under the influence. You cannot sell drugs. And we make it like that's a real complicated problem. Ask Cedric what would happen when he used to get caught with a syringe. He used to get 90 days. Like, it was like they would violate your parole. You go back to prison. And I'm not saying we need to lock up generations of drug addicts. By any means, that's not what I'm saying. But if you're allowed to do that, why wouldn't you do it? If I'm allowed to just hang out on 7th and Market and shoot dope and I'm strung out, like, why wouldn't I do it? We make those things okay. So I don't think all these videos have moved policy. You know, people talk about it often, but if I was a district supervisor and that was happening in my neighborhood, I would be out there day and night with a bullhorn and 300 of my friends saying, we're going to shut this block down ourselves. Cedric, I, Rudy Corpus, Tom Wolf, Gina, others, we've done several marches where we've taken to the streets. Then what happened is those marches got politicized. And then elected people wanted to get involved in our marches. We wanted to just take over 6th and Mission. You know, Cedric's got 2 stabilization centers. One is opening in a few weeks. It's very medically oriented. It's about 80% cheaper than the one that's on Geary Street. And it'll actually house 80 people with clinicians and doctors and nurse practitioners on site that will really deal with the physical and behavioral health needs of people right off the streets, get them in a structured, drug-free environment, and then route them, triage them to the next place in their lives.
Wow.
But the problem is, you walk outside those buildings now, drug users, drug addicts everywhere, right in the 6th Street corridor.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I tend to think that even with all of the preponderance of social media that we see and are exposed to as constituents, the mechanics of changing people's minds inside City Hall is, are you able to bring 500 people who agree with you to City Hall? And are you going to be able to be one of the people that is the last person that the policymaker talks to before they vote on something?
You're absolutely right. It's still old school way of bringing people there, demonstrating and marching in the streets. That's the only thing that brings about change. Social media is the platform to be able to put the information out to people. But I just think social media has made us complacent where we don't have to show up because everything is live. But when you're in somebody's face and showing it to them, it's a lot different than it is when you doing it on social media.
Okay, but you do have, to jump in, but you do have circumstances where people are showing up. The 16th and Julian, right? People showed up. Has it resulted in any change? No, well, it seems worse than ever.
No, that people was just showing up to be able to support. I can tell you from my perspective, I personally showed up to be able to support that, and it was about those children in the neighborhood because nobody talked about the children at all. We act like the children don't exist because most of the people, politicians and people that have things, send their children to private school. So they don't give a damn about public schools. And so that's another reason why our public school system sucks so much. But the other side is that that was more about just to support an individual. and his family. And that's what that turned into. But like Steve was saying is, I don't necessarily like to be a part of a movement. I mean, you're going to get that commandeers, people coming in, trying to come with their own political satire and come in with their own political point of view on something and takes the meaning out of it. Because when I did it, I want to do it, be able to make change, to be able to get the people off of the street, be able to get Gubio Project to come and be a part, in which we did. Steve and I met with the director of the program. I'm looking for solutions for them to get on board, to be able to assist us to be able to take care of the community. So that's just the way I see it, because it's about doing. And some people's intentions are not always the best when they're coming to be a part of something. Then they start wanting to tell you how to do it. And the best thing we want, I don't want to come up with all these creative ways, which is helpful sometimes. I just want it off the street. I want our sidewalks safe. That's what I want. And it doesn't take all of that to do it. We don't need to make any more new laws for it. We don't have to, because they already exist. All we just do is get it moved off the street.
So but maybe a month ago or something, 2 months ago, one of the supervisors wanted to bring in David Kennedy, who was from John Jay. And, when I was in graduate school, post-prison, I wrote extensively about Operation Ceasefire. I actually thought it was an amazing thing. I was actually part of it. When I was on parole, I was part of a call-in where they called us in. It's like, we know what you guys are doing, and if you get busted, here's what's going to happen to you. But we want to help you before you get busted. And it was very clear. We knew what we were to expect if we didn't listen to them. And so they wanted to bring in David Kennedy to advise on the open-air drug market. And I was just like, dude, this is insanity. Like, Tom Wolfe was part of Haney's street-level drug dealing task force. What happened to those recommendations? What happened to hiring police officers? What happened to arresting drug dealers? Like, we don't need to pay more money for somebody to tell us, oh, yes, you have an open-air drug market. We have an expert right here in the Bay Area, Keith Humphreys. I mean, this guy is, the best of the best. And it's not a complicated problem. There's no political will. They created DMAC, so it's got all these police agencies apparently working together to arrest people. Okay, well, what we need to do is we need a decision point analysis. Somebody needs to see what arrests were made on Monday, where they booked into jail, how long did they stay in jail, which cases did the district attorney prosecute, what was the outcome of the prosecution, and nobody tracks that stuff because it's uncomfortable information for everybody to know or share, right? I think the judges in San Francisco are another layer of problems. I think the nonprofit that handles pretrial release is not really aligned with the rest of the public safety agencies. I do think personally that the probation department should be overseeing all pretrial services in every county in California except San Jose and San Francisco. Pretrial is all run by the probation department. In most cases, it's non-sworn staff. People that are facing alleged law violations have different rights than people that are actually convicted, so different rights than people that are already on probation. But when I was with the probation department, several people that were on probation would catch new cases and get sent to pretrial diversion who would not even communicate with the probation department or the probation officer to work together to provide a rational response to what this person is doing. So again, blend all this stuff together, and then what's the city's response? Oh, we need more experts to come and tell us how to do this. I'm going to give the city free advice right now. Arrest drug dealers, enforce the law, and most of these problems will go away. They just
who can do that?
I was wondering when you were going to mention judges and pretrial diversion. Those are two very important points.
Yeah, I mean, pretrial diversion got a massive contract. It's like, I don't know, they've got renewed. It's like $18 million a year. It's under the jurisdiction of the sheriff's department. It's not supposed to, by statute, and I'm probably going to get a little bit of this wrong. When Prop 25 came out, where I think it was like the no bail law or something, where Newsom was going to give money to counties for pretrial services that would all be under probation departments. It got contested by the bail bondsmen, and bail bondsmen are saying, we should never pass this law. They were very smart the way they organized. They went out to communities of color and said, hey, this no bail thing ain't going to work, because if you got a history, they're never going to let you out, which actually I thought was true also. And I thought it should be a little more balanced. Like, if you can't get out on pretrial release, then you should be able to at least bail out. But it was an all or nothing bill. And what happened was it lost. It did pass in San Francisco. It lost statewide. And so the law never took place. So pretrial stayed an independent nonprofit in San Francisco. And we lost, I think it was $15 million that would have came from the state. But I do think the probation department in San Francisco is well equipped with accountability and services. And it's not the pretrial staff. The staff at pretrial are good. It's often involves ideology driven by leadership. And I feel like pretrial diversion is in line with the public defender's office, and then to some degree, some of these judges, right? So it's this victimization. Like, I couldn't be the only person who was always guilty. There's just no possible way. Like, if you talk to Cedric or Tom Wolf or anybody else, we were always guilty. And now when you talk to people in the system, nobody's ever guilty. Cop was wrong, judge was wrong, DA's lying. Like, there's zero accountability in the system. It just perpetuates this madness. I saw an RFP go out last week. I almost lost my mind. And it was from the sheriff's department. And it was for two things. I think one was like peer advocates or something, which I'm not even sure what people like that do. But the one that caught my eye was that they wanted to provide what they're calling bridge housing for people in jail until they were placed in permanent supportive housing. What a message. I live in North Carolina or South Carolina, very conservative. I'm going to go to San Francisco. I can get loaded on the streets. If I get busted, they'll likely let me go. But if they do prosecute me, the fucking sheriff's department is going to house me until I get a free apartment. Like, how does any of this make any sense on the back of taxpayers, on the back of San Francisco having $1 billion deficit? Like, again, we talked about what's our vision for a city? How do we get to this vision? And again, these are, does the mayor know that this is going out? The mayor's got a great person in charge of health and homelessness, one of the best government employees that I've ever met. And Kunal Modi, this guy is smart.
Yeah, he is.
He's balanced.
He gets it.
He's very, very good. And, I didn't have a chance, but does he know about this? Because I don't think it's in line with expanding. I mean, it doesn't just sound crazy. Go to jail and get a free apartment for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
To me, where were those policies when I was breaking the law? That's what I wanted. We got it. I always said as a kid, growing up, I wanted to live in a gated community with armed guards. And when I did my first prison term, I'd realized my dream had come true.
Yeah.
And then you got drug court too. So there's that whole other, diversion and all that. And I wrote that piece during the Boudin era about the fact they were sending drug dealers to drug court, who were then sitting next to their clients, all going through drug court, and then they'd all go through diversion. People that had violent felonies on their record, shouldn't even attempted murder, shouldn't be going through diversion. And then, we had to get Carl Olson, a very famous First Amendment lawyer, to threaten a lawsuit to get the data. And then we found out why, because he hadn't tracked a single diversion case. I'm not sure it's gotten all that much better, to be honest.
Well, another thing, though, too, during that time, I was told, and the African American community was told that they were doing this no bail because it allowed African Americans to be able to get out of custody because they couldn't afford bail, and because the disproportionate number of African Americans that were still incarcerated. But it's strange that even though all of this is happening in San Francisco, African Americans are still the majority of the people that are in custody, and they're the ones that don't necessarily get out immediately.
Right.
Like everyone else does. So, it's all been a joke for me. And it's just like something that systematically is going in our system that it's amazing how we can ignore the law on some instances and it's okay. But when we ignore the law in other instances, we are wrong. So, it's just like, this is kind of like this old schizophrenia that they are placing on us at this time. And I don't understand how government can be that way. How we can have the public defender's office and, like, say, pretrial diversion and the judges all in cahoots with each other, but the taxpayers are paying everybody. So it should be for a better San Francisco. And that's why, again, I was talking about, I understand individual rights. I understand that. And they're kind of like what America is based on. But the other side is we still have to look at the whole in the community. Because one thing I know, that people who are in power and people who have money, this doesn't affect it. Nope. What it affects is the everyday people. And that's what has to change.
Okay, then there's been some statements saying, well, this is what needs to happen. Outline it. Both you, Steve, and you, Cedric, have made some very clear points. This is what should happen in order to have a better city. Who's to blame? You've got to have a point person. Are you talking to the mayor? Are you talking to supervisor? Who are you referring to when it comes to accountability? The names, who are they? Who needs to be held accountable?
Well, for me, it's I'm not going to single out no one individual or anything, but I mean, again, if you run for office and you're elected, then you do what the people ask you to do. You do what's best for the city of San Francisco. That's what you all say when you run. And for me, when I talk to people, it's simple as this. We can sit up and point the finger at everybody and it makes everybody responsibility. But I know when COVID happened, that everybody was in agreement that we should take the people off of the streets, place them somewhere, because we didn't know what we were getting into. We all agreed to that. The other thing I know that was to be true, that nobody knew, though, that the city was furnishing them alcohol, furnishing them drugs, and furnishing them everything that they needed to be in the place so they could stay inside. So during that period, I know I was out in the streets then, but I still have to take responsibility, because we didn't wake up 3 years later or 4 years later and say, wow, look what happened. But everything that was going on inside of those hotels, which were city funded, all of that came back to the streets when the gig was up. And not only that, the city still has to pay for those hotels that they allowed to get destroyed. And then the other side is, as an individual in this city, we all have to take responsibility for what happened. Because now we have voices, and I'm not saying people wasn't speaking up during those times, but it wasn't a collective voice. It was almost kind of like a passive thing for us. So now we all have to stand up. But if we do have elected officials in San Francisco, yes, each one of them are responsible. Each one of them are responsible for what has happened. And that's where we have to hold them accountable. And anytime I'll go to City Hall and go just walk in people's offices and just, let's talk and let's get things done. But I'm one voice, and I can't speak for somebody else. I'm not one of them. Don't have me the head. You speak for all the black people. No, I don't. I speak for me. That's the only person I can speak for. And as a recovery community, it's just we are voices that had not been heard. And all we wanted was a balance in this city, a balance to be able to have people to give them better choices so they can make better decisions in this city. But it's for me, it's not so much as calling somebody out on it. It's more so that just if you're in position and that's your job to do it, then we need to come together as a collective on it. Because what happens in this city right now is we have laws, but people do what they want to do.
That's right.
And I'm talking about the people that work for the city. They run it the way they want to do it, and they let more of, they call it, what they call the people outside? They call the people that, I can't think of the name, but you have outside people that watch the boards have more influence on how the city runs than the actual rules and the regulations of it. They're the ones that have created all of the rules for that how shelters are ran, how everybody have to be treated equally. Because one thing I know this in San Francisco too, the people I deal with every day, especially the ones that's been through a DPA system, they are very aware of all the rules and the laws, but don't know how to live and don't know how to take care of themselves. And they so quick to come in and say to you, this is how you have to treat me. This is what I'm supposed to have. And I know a lot of that comes from the Homeless Coalition and teaching people. And I'm not saying people should know their rights, but when I'm in a position where I don't even know how to take care of myself and my hands is out like cups, that doesn't work for me. And people that are using drugs that kind of remind me of children. Children want structure. Children want direction. And that's the same thing as recovering addicts. That's what's needed at that point. And it's not about what necessarily I want at this particular time. It's more about what's going to be better for you. Because it seems like you're not making good decisions. And your decisions affect us all.
You think that's so simple, right? Doesn't that seem so simple? And I just don't understand why anybody would not think that was the right direction to go. It doesn't make any sense. I wrote a story about, what to do with the hardcore homeless years ago and did a different version of it for The Voice. But in that story, I talked about my mom, who was Sicilian and always had a garden, and she loved fennel. So she would grow fennel. We'd have fennel with everything. And I hated fennel. And I'd say, I don't want fennel. I'm not eating fennel. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks like you blacked out for a little bit, and we just dropped Cedric.
Oh, okay. So anyway,
I'll be on the lookout for him.
So the bottom line was that my mom told me when I bought my own groceries, I didn't have to eat fennel. You can't give children choices any more than you can people that can't make decisions for themselves as adults. I don't eat fennel anymore, by the way.
Well, I want to say goodbye to everybody. For me, it's 12:30, and I've got someone coming to pick me up to do some events. I did get a really nice text, private message from a relative of mine who's in recovery, and his message is thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm not even sure exactly who that's directed to, but I think it's to both of you guys.
Well, I would say thank you for having us, and really appreciate all you're doing. And I am optimistic. I do feel like the energy in San Francisco feels different. I think people are more encouraged than ever. I think people are betting on San Francisco, and there's just this last little linchpin. And if we can just get this one thing right, we're going to get our city back. So I think we should all work together to try to get it over the finish line and hold people that are in office accountable. And if people in office, I'm sure the election coming up next year for supervisors races is going to be very exciting. And, all politics are local. So I'd encourage everybody to get involved.
Yep. 100%. Thank you guys for what you do and for coming on the show. And again, just as a reporter who's covered this for 3 decades, it's just refreshing to see people getting a voice or having a voice now that, makes more sense than obviously what hasn't worked for 30 years. And we see those results on the street.
Exactly. Cedric, did you get back on?
He's there.
I'm seeing you back. Cedric?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you go.
All right. Yeah. No, I want to thank you guys so much for allowing us to be on. And as long as I have breath in my body, I know there's hope. And I'm a servant that wants to be able to bring hope to individuals and bring hope to our city. And I know this city has always been a trendsetter, one way or the other. And we need to be the leading voices and to be the leading city of how to do this and how to bring it back, because a lot of things that are happening in San Francisco are starting to spread to other places, and they're going to be looking to someone to, what did you do and how did you deal with it? And I just believe that right now we have the word out through all the, from social media to voices, and you guys on doing this now. And I just thank you so much for continuing to do what you do. And we fully support you. And I just truly believe that we just all need to work together. And if we work together, we can get more things done than we can individually. Thank you.
Amen to that.
Yes, absolutely. And so if you want to follow us on X, we are at The Voice SF. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, which is always has an amazing intro by our editor-in-chief, Mike Egie, with some scooplets and scoops, go to at thevoicesf.org or just thevoicesf.org.
Yeah, it's thevoicesf.org. The Twitter address is the VOSF.
Yes, at the VOSF, and then you can also subscribe, and you can make a tax-deductible donation. You can sign up for the newsletter, make a small donation or a large donation. It's all 100% tax-deductible to keep us going.
And if you are interested in checking out our past Sunday Brunch Spaces, we have an archive now of these set up at YouTube. And that is youtube.com/the VOSF.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody have a great Sunday. And thanks to our guests and our listeners. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.